My boy Todd is wearing a family medal tonight, honoring a man who served so we didn't have to. That's what my father said, standing near the bar at a Veterans Appreciation dinner. One hand wrapped around a glass of bourbon he hadn't earned, the other gesturing toward my brother like he was unveiling a monument. He was talking about my medal. He just didn't know I was in the room. My name is Isla Fairburn. I'm 35 years old, and up until 40 seconds ago, I was sitting near the back wall of the Ridgewood Armory, watching a slideshow cycle through photographs of veterans and their families, trying to decide if the chicken on my plate was worth the drive. Now I'm watching my younger brother Todd stand at the head table with my Defense Meritorious Service Medal pinned to his lapel. Serial number D, MS7714F. Citation signed by Colonel Rhea Stanton during her tenure as Installation Commanding Officer. Call sign referenced in the commendation, Foxtrot Sierra 7. I know every scratch on that medal's face. I earned every one of them. They don't know that yet. If you've ever watched someone else wear your story like a costume, hit that like button and subscribe. I didn't come back for the dinner. I came back because a fellow NCO named Davis secured me an invitation and said it would be good for me to be in a room full of people who understood what the silence costs. He wasn't wrong. He just didn't know my family would be there. Neither did I. I drove to the armory alone, not to the family home. I hadn't been to the family home in 14 months. The last time I visited, my father redirected every conversation away from me so smoothly, it was almost a skill. Every question about my work, my life, my time overseas, redirected, absorbed, replaced with something about Todd's new territory at Praxis Technologies, Todd's quota numbers, Todd's client dinner with the regional VP. I stopped trying. Apparently, even that was too much. The armory smelled the way armories always smell. Industrial floor wax, old upholstery, the faint electrical hum of fluorescent lights running too hot. American flags frame the stage on both sides. A podium waited at center, draped with a banner that read, "Honoring those who serve." The PA system crackled and warmed like it was clearing its throat. I parked alone. Walked in alone. No family text saying, "We're here." No assigned seat with my name on a card. No acknowledgement when I stepped through the double doors and let them swing shut behind me. That was it. No warmth. No recognition. Just a room full of strangers and 120 chairs arranged in rows of 10. I took a seat near the back. I smoothed the sleeves of my blouse down to my wrists. The left sleeve covered the scar. 2 inches. Crescent-shaped. Inside of the forearm. Secondary detonation. First deployment. 2012. I don't explain the scar. I don't hide it either. But in rooms like this, long sleeves are simpler. The faint chemical smell on my own hands was still there. It never fully washes out. Ghost residue from the compounds I neutralize for a living. Most people wouldn't notice. I always do. I saw Wallace before he saw me. He was standing near the bar with 2 men in VFW caps, one hand on each of their shoulders, like they were old friends. They weren't. Wallace Raymond Fairburn has never served a day in uniform. Not one. But he attends every veterans function at this armory. Every single one. He positions himself next to men who did serve and absorbs their status by proximity. He introduces himself as a military family. He says it the way some people say grace. Practiced, automatic, unexamined. He is 63 years old, retired machinist, Hargrove Manufacturing, now closed, pension and Social Security. and a story about his family that he built the way he used to build engine housings. Precise, measured, designed to hold weight it was never meant to bear. Denial, I would learn, was their specialty. But Wallace had refined it into architecture. I scanned the head table. Todd was already seated, 29 years old, regional sales representative, clean blazer, good posture, nervous hands, and on his left lapel, polished and positioned with obvious care, was my medal. 12 feet away. I could see it from 12 feet away. The ribbon, the pendant, the way the overhead light caught the engraving. I knew that medal the way a mother knows her child's handwriting. I knew the weight of it in my palm. I knew the exact moment it was placed in my hands at Fort Liberty. And I knew the woman who placed it there. And I knew what it cost me to earn it. 31 confirmed IED neutralizations across 2 deployments to Iraq. 6 in a 72-hour window during conditions that deteriorated faster than anyone's models had predicted. Foxtrot Sierra 7 was my call sign, my team, my wire, my hands. That medal was not a family heirloom. It was not a dead uncle's legacy. It was mine. My hands folded in my lap. I didn't flinch. I stayed silent. The room's hierarchy was visible. Veterans with service ribbons sat near the front, families behind them, guests along the walls. Todd, undecorated except for my medal, sat in a position of implied honor at the head table. Wallace was beside him now, one hand on his son's shoulder, performing the role of proud patriarch for whoever would watch. A projected slideshow cycled on the wall behind the stage. Photographs of veterans and their families. Faces I didn't recognize. Faces I did. And then one photograph, submitted by Wallace. Todd at a prior event, crisp blazer, clean smile. The caption beneath it read, "The Fairburn family, honoring those who served." I was not in the photograph. I am the one who served. The buffet line opened. Chicken, mashed potatoes, dinner rolls stacked in a basket. A sheet cake near the exit decorated with a flag done in red and blue frosting. The food was ordinary. The occasion being made of it was not. I folded my napkin beside my untouched plate. Todd didn't see me. Wallace didn't see me. But someone else did. Colonel Rhea Stanton circulated the room during the pre-dinner reception. She was in dress uniform, service ribbons stacked precisely across her chest, posture unhurried, the kind of stillness that comes from decades of command, not rigid, settled. She moved through the crowd the way experienced officers do, greeting without lingering, listening without committing. Her gaze swept the room with the practiced efficiency of someone accustomed to reading a theater at a glance. She paused near the head table. Her eyes moved across the seated guests, moved past Todd, then came back. Her gaze caught on his lapel. It stopped. She leaned forward. 1 degree. No more. Her expression didn't change, but her posture shifted. Something sharpened behind her eyes. The difference between looking and seeing. The difference between scanning a room and identifying ordnance. She was reading the serial stamp on the medal's reverse. DMS 7714F. Her command reference number is embedded in that stamp. She wrote the citation. She signed it. She remembers the name Foxtrot Sierra 7 and what that team did in a 72-hour window that most people in this room will never read about. When Colonel Stanton read that stamp, she was reading her own handwriting in metal. Even the PA system, still warming up in the corner, seemed to go very quiet. She asked Todd one question. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. 120 attendees could hear her anyway. The room had that kind of silence, the kind that presses against your chest. "Can you tell me how you earned this decoration, son?" Todd's color drained. Not slowly. All at once. Like someone had pulled a plug at the base of his throat, and everything warm rushed downward and out. He looked at the metal on his own lapel as if seeing it for the first time. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "My father gave it to me," he said. His voice cracked on the second word. "He said it belonged to our uncle." Todd pointed at Wallace. They hadn't counted on one thing. Colonel Stanton had signed that citation herself. I watched from the back wall. I had not moved. I had not spoken. I knew what that medal was. I knew what just happened. I took a sip of water. I set the glass down gently. Not yet. Wallace stepped forward. He always steps forward. That is what Wallace does. He fills silence with volume. He read the room the way a man reads a poker table. He saw a senior officer in dress uniform asking questions. He saw his son faltering. And he did what he has done for 7 years. He spoke confidently. He spoke loudly. "That medal belonged to my late brother-in-law," Wallace said. His chin was up. His shoulders were squared. He was performing grief the way he performs patriotism. Borrowed, rehearsed. A man who served this country with honor. A man who deserved to be remembered. My son is wearing it tonight to keep that legacy alive. He placed his hand on Todd's shoulder again. Squeezed. The gesture was meant to look like comfort. It was a leash. Colonel Stanton did not blink. She did not nod. She did not acknowledge the story at all. "Sir," she said, and the word carried no warmth. "There is no record of any service member by the surname Fairburn matching the citation on this decoration, except one." Wallace's hand tightened on Todd's shoulder. "This serial number," Stanton continued, "is cross-referenced in the Department of the Army's citation register. It was issued 7 years ago at Fort Liberty. I know this because my command reference number is embedded in the stamp." She paused. 1 beat. 2. "I signed the citation myself." The room tilted just slightly. Wallace's mouth opened. No sound came out. His hand slid off Todd's shoulder like something had gone numb. Stanton straightened. She was not finished. "The decoration you have described as a family heirloom is an active citation. It belongs to a living service member, a staff sergeant currently serving in the United States Army." Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. Unauthorized display of military decorations is a federal offense under 18 U.S.C. Section 704. She looked at Wallace the way she might look at a device that needed to be rendered safe. "You're being issued a federal citation, Mr. Fairburn. Do not leave this building." Wallace did not sit down. He locked in place. His weight shifted backward 1/2 inch, like a man who had leaned against a wall and found nothing there. The room had 120 people in it. Not one of them moved. I could see it from the back wall. The way the silence spread. Not gradually, all at once, like a pressure wave from a controlled detonation, the kind you feel in your teeth before you hear it. Forks stopped mid-motion. Conversations died mid-syllable. 2 men near the bar set their glasses down at the same time without looking at each other, as if the room itself had issued an order. Wallace's jaw worked. Open, closed, open. He was searching for the next line in a script that no longer existed. His eyes moved across the room, looking for someone who would help him. No one met his gaze. The 2 VFW men he'd been performing for 5 minutes ago were studying the tablecloth like it contained classified material. Todd hadn't moved either. His hand hovered near the metal on his lapel, not touching it, not removing it. suspended. He looked at Wallace with something I recognized. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was the specific vertigo of realizing the floor you've been standing on was never solid. Colonel Stanton excused herself from the head table. She did not rush. She stepped to the far corner of the room near the service entrance, produced a phone from her jacket, and made one call. Her back was straight. Her voice was inaudible from where I sat. The call lasted less than 90 seconds. She returned to the head table and stood behind her chair. She did not sit. She folded her hands at her waist. She waited. I took another sip of water. My hands stayed folded in my lap. The glass was steady when I set it down. That was the last time I sat in that chair as a guest no one recognized. Wallace found his voice. He always finds his voice. That is both his gift and his pathology. He stepped closer to Stanton, lowering his register the way men do when they want to sound reasonable, rather than desperate. "Colonel, I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said. "This is a family matter. My daughter, she served, yes, but in a support capacity. Logistics. Maintenance. She moved equipment on base. She wouldn't have received something like this. I'm sure there's a clerical overlap somewhere in the system." He was rewriting me. Right there, in real time, in front of 120 people. The same way he had rewritten me for 7 years. She's in some kind of support role. She moves equipment. She's not the type who talks about it. They hadn't just forgotten me. They'd rewritten me. Stanton's expression did not change. Not a single degree. She looked at Wallace the way I look at a wire I haven't identified yet. Steady. Patient. Measuring the distance between what is said and what is true. "Mr. Fairburn," she said, "I did not ask about your daughter's role. I told you what I know about the citation I signed." She paused. The pause was surgical. "Would you like me to read the commendation language into the record in front of this room? Because I can do that from memory." Wallace's color shifted. Not pale. Gray. The color of a man whose internal scaffolding has begun to buckle but hasn't fallen yet. "That won't be necessary," he said. "Then I suggest you sit down, sir." He did not sit down, but he stopped talking. And for Wallace Raymond Fairburn, that was the same thing as collapse. The thing about silence is that it isn't always passive. Sometimes silence is the sharpest answer. I watched Colonel Stanton's gaze leave Wallace. It moved across the room, methodical, row by row. The way you clear a grid. She was looking for something. I knew what it was before her eyes found me. She was looking for the name on that citation. Her gaze reached the back wall. It passed over me. Then it came back. She saw my posture first. I'm sure of that. 13 years of service does something to the way a person sits. It's not rigid. It's settled. The same stillness she carries. The kind that civilians read as passivity and soldiers read as discipline. Then her eyes dropped to my left arm. My sleeve had shifted. Not much. 1/2 inch above the wrist. Enough. The crescent scar. 2 inches. Inside of the forearm. Secondary detonation. First deployment. 2012. I don't explain it. I don't hide it either. Stanton's gaze held on it for 3 seconds. I counted. Her expression tightened. Not confusion. Recognition. The kind that arrives like a combination lock clicking into its final position. Scar, posture, proximity to the room but distance from the family. The blank space in a narrative that had been built specifically to erase me. She crossed the room. Not quickly. Not slowly. With the exact cadence of a commanding officer approaching someone she outranks but respects. Her boots were quiet on the linoleum. The dress uniform moved without a wrinkle. Every ribbon on her chest caught the fluorescent light in sequence as she walked, like a signal lamp transmitting in code. She stopped in front of my table. She did not look at the empty chairs beside me. She did not look at my untouched plate. She looked at me. "Staff Sergeant Fairburn," she said. She said it clearly, not loudly, clearly. The way you say a name that has weight, the way you address someone whose rank you remember because you wrote it into a citation with your own hand. I stood, slowly. My napkin fell from my lap. I did not pick it up. "Ma'am," I said. That was all. One word. It was enough. "Ma'am." The correct form of address from an enlisted NCO to a colonel. The word carried 13 years of service in 2 syllables. Stanton studied my face. Then she asked one question, quiet enough that only I could hear it. "Foxtrot Sierra 7, the 6-device sequence in the 72-hour window. What was the configuration on the 3rd device?" My stomach tightened, not from fear, from the weight of being known. "Pressure plate," I said. "Triple stacked, daisy-chained to a secondary 40 meters east. My team leader called it a birthday cake." She nodded, almost imperceptibly. It wasn't approval. It was memory. If you've ever been underestimated by people who don't know the real story, hit that like button and subscribe. Stanton turned. She faced the room. 120 people. Veterans. Families. Guests. Wallace, still standing near the head table like a man waiting for a verdict. Todd, still frozen, his hand still hovering near the medal he now understood was never his to wear. "This woman," Colonel Stanton said, and her voice carried to every corner of that armory without effort, "is Staff Sergeant Isla Marie Fairburn, United States Army, Military Occupational Specialty 89D Explosive Ordnance Disposal." The room did not breathe. Staff Sergeant Fairburn has completed 2 combat deployments to Iraq. She has 31 confirmed IED neutralizations in her service record. 31. She let the number land. During her 2nd deployment, her team, call sign Foxtrot Sierra 7, neutralized 6 improvised explosive devices in a 72-hour operational window under deteriorating conditions that exceeded every contingency model we had built. She paused. The Defense Meritorious Service Medal currently displayed on that young man's lapel was awarded to Staff Sergeant Fairburn at Fort Liberty 7 years ago. I wrote the citation. I signed it. Serial number DMS 7714F. My command reference is embedded in the stamp. Even the chandelier overhead, a cheap brass fixture that had probably hung in that armory for 30 years, seemed to tremble under the weight of the fluorescent light. She turned toward Wallace. "The decoration was not a family heirloom, Mr. Fairburn. It was not issued to a deceased relative. It was earned by your daughter, in conditions you cannot imagine. And you removed it from her record and placed it on someone who never served." Wallace swayed. 1 inch to the left. His hand found the back of a chair. His knuckles went white. His mouth opened. The sound that came out was not a word. It was the beginning of one. A fragment. A consonant looking for a vowel that would never arrive. "I didn't," he started. Todd stood up. He unpinned the medal from his own lapel. His fingers shook. He held it in his open palm and extended it toward Stanton like it was something that might detonate. "I didn't know," Todd said. His voice was barely audible. "He told me it was Uncle Ray's. I didn't know." Stanton took the medal. She held it in her hand. She looked at the serial stamp one more time. Then she looked at me. The front door of the armory opened. 2 sets of boots on linoleum, precise cadence, military police. They did not scan the room for the senior officer. They found Stanton immediately. They found her because she was standing next to me. The first MP looked at Wallace, then at Stanton, then at me. He saluted. Crisp, formal. The kind of salute you render when you know exactly who you're addressing and why. He didn't salute Wallace. He didn't salute Todd. He saluted the colonel. And then he looked at me and said the words that changed the architecture of that room forever. Staff Sergeant Fairburn. Ma'am, we're here on Colonel Stanton's authority. The decoration has been recovered. Wallace's knees buckled. Not all the way. Just enough. His hand gripped the chair harder. His other hand hung at his side. Empty. The performance was over. The patriarch, who had built a 7-year monument to someone else's silence, watched it come apart in less than 10 minutes. And suddenly, 120 people, including my father and my brother, went very, very quiet. Stanton held the medal in her right hand. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she crossed the 3 feet between us and placed it in my palm. The weight was the same. It had always been the same, but the room around it had changed. "This belongs to you, Staff Sergeant," she said. "It always did." I closed my fingers around it. I didn't look at it. I didn't need to. I knew every edge, every scratch, the raised lettering on the reverse, the stamp that carried a serial number, and the handwriting of the woman standing in front of me. I had held this medal once before, 7 years ago, on a parade field at Fort Liberty with dust still in my lungs and the ghost of a pressure plate still tingling in my fingertips. It felt the same now. Heavier, maybe. Not from the medal. From what had been done to it in the years between. I said nothing. I held my gaze. My hands were steady. Wallace spoke. Of course, he spoke. Even with 2 military police officers flanking the aisle and a colonel who had just disassembled his entire narrative in front of 120 witnesses, Wallace Raymond Fairburn found words. That is his disease. He cannot let silence exist without filling it. He cannot let a room settle without tilting it back toward himself. "Isla," he said. His voice was quieter now, stripped. The performance register was gone, replaced by something thinner, something that cracked at the seams. "Isla, why didn't you ever tell us? Why didn't you say something all these years? You never once said what you really did." The room waited. Every face turned toward me. The 2 VFW men near the bar. The families at the middle tables. Todd, standing with his empty lapel and his open palm still extended toward nothing. Aunt Carol, seated 3 rows from the front, her hands pressed flat against the tablecloth, watching me with an expression I had not seen from a family member in 13 years. Something close to belief. I looked at my father. I did not raise my voice. I did not lean forward. My hands stayed at my sides. One held the medal. The other was still. "You didn't want the truth, Wallace. You wanted a story you could control." I used his first name. I had never done that before. Not once in 35 years. But rank has a way of clarifying things, and the man standing in front of me had forfeited the other title a long time ago. "You spent 7 years telling people I moved equipment, that I worked in support, that I wasn't the type who talks about it." I paused, one beat. "You were right about that last part. I'm not the type who talks about it, but that's not because there's nothing to say. It's because some things are classified, some things are operational, and some things are simply not yours to take." Wallace's mouth opened. Nothing came out. His hand was still gripping the chair. His knuckles had gone from white to gray. "You didn't forget me," I said. "You replaced me. You took my service record and turned it into a dead man's ghost story, so your son could wear it on his chest at a dinner where the woman who signed the citation was standing 6 feet away." I looked at the metal in my hand. 31 devices, I said. 6 in 72 hours. A secondary detonation that gave me a scar I cover with long sleeves at your dinner table, so you don't have to look at what your daughter actually does for a living. I let the silence hold. You never asked about the scar either. Wallace's eyes dropped to my left arm. The sleeve had shifted again. The crescent was visible. 2 inches, white against the skin. He stared at it the way a man stares at evidence he has spent years refusing to see. "I didn't know," he whispered. "But you did." My voice was level, flat, the same tone I use on a frequency when I'm calling in a confirmed neutralization. No inflection, no performance, just the fact. You knew I served. You knew I deployed. You knew I came home different. And you decided that different meant less. I folded the metal into my palm and placed it in my jacket pocket. Carefully, the way I handle anything that carries a charge. "I'm not here for an apology," I said. "I'm here because a fellow NCO thought I should be in a room full of people who understand what silence costs. He was right. You were never one of those people." I looked at Todd. He was still standing. His eyes were red. His hands were shaking. He had not spoken since he said, "I didn't know." "Todd," I said. He flinched, like the sound of his own name was a trigger. "You didn't know," I said. "I believe that." He nodded, a small motion, almost imperceptible. "But now you do." That was all. I didn't say it with warmth. I didn't say it with cruelty. I said it with precision, the same way I say everything, because precision is what keeps you alive when every other instinct tells you to rush. Colonel Stanton stepped beside me. She looked at the senior MP. "Mr. Fairburn will be issued a federal citation under 18 U.S.C. Section 704, she said. "Unauthorized display of military decorations. The decoration has been recovered. Process the citation tonight. I want it filed before morning." The MP nodded. He turned toward Wallace. Wallace did not resist. He did not protest. His hand finally released the chair. He walked toward the service entrance, flanked by the 2 MPs, and he did not look back at me. He did not look back at Todd. He looked at the floor, the same linoleum he had crossed an hour ago with his chin up and his hand on his son's shoulder, and a story about a dead uncle that never existed. The door closed behind him. The room exhaled. I picked up my jacket from the back of my chair. I did not look at the slideshow still cycling on the wall. I did not look at the photograph of Todd in his blazer with the caption about the Fairburn family honoring those who served. I walked toward the exit. My boots were quiet on the floor, the same cadence I have carried for 13 years, measured, unhurried, the cadence of someone who knows that rushing is how you get killed. Aunt Carol caught my arm as I passed her table. Gently, not a grab, a touch. "Isla," she said. I stopped. "I always knew he was lying," she said. "I just didn't know what the truth was." Her eyes were wet. Her voice was steady. "I should have asked." I looked at her. I saw something I had not seen from a family member in so long, I had forgotten what it felt like. Not pride, not pity. Honesty. "Yes," I said. "You should have." She nodded. She let go of my arm, and she did not try to make it better. She did not explain. She did not qualify. She just sat there with the weight of it. That was enough. I walked out of the Ridgewood Armory at 8:47 p.m. The night air was cool. October in North Carolina. The kind of air that sharpens every thought and makes your breath visible for half a second before it disappears. I stood in the parking lot for a full minute. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I held the medal in my pocket and I breathed. 30 days later, I stood on the parade field at Fort Liberty. Full dress uniform. The same field where the medal had been presented the first time, 7 years earlier. But this time, the bleachers were not empty. This time, there were witnesses. Colonel Stanton presided. She read the citation aloud. Every word. The operation. The timeline. The 72-hour window. The 6 devices. The call sign, Foxtrot Sierra 7. And then a voice from the formation called out. Not from the stage, from the ranks. I served with her. Foxtrot Sierra 7. Second deployment. Sergeant First Class Dennis Holt, 41 years old, my former EOD team leader. He stepped forward. His uniform was pressed to regulation. His ribbons were stacked tight. He looked at me with an expression that carried no sentimentality and all the weight of a man who had watched me walk toward things that could kill us both. She neutralized the 3rd device in that sequence, while I was on the radio calling for a medevac for our spotter. He said, pressure plate, triple stacked, daisy-chained to a secondary 40 meters east. He paused. I called it a birthday cake. She walked up to it anyway. He didn't embellish. He didn't need to. Dennis Holt is like me, economical, precise. He said what happened. Then he stepped back into formation. Stanton placed the medal on my chest a second time, this time in front of a formation that understood what it meant. This time, with my name on the program. This time, with the serial number verified, and the citation read aloud, and the record corrected. It wasn't ceremony. It wasn't theater. It was restoration. Wallace Fairburn was charged under 18 U.S.C. Section 704. The federal citation carried a fine. He paid it. He did not contest it. He did not appear in court. He sent a check through his attorney. He has not attended a veterans function at the Ridgewood Armory since. The 2 VFW men he had been performing for that night never spoke to him again. His church friends stopped calling. Not because they were told what happened, because they found out. Small towns carry information the way rivers carry current, quietly, inevitably, into every corner. Todd called me once, 6 weeks after the dinner. He didn't apologize. He said 4 words. I should have known. I told him yes, he should have. He asked if I would come to Thanksgiving. I said no. Not out of spite, not out of pride, but because I no longer needed to step into a place that asked me to shrink. Aunt Carol called 3 months later. She didn't ask about my work. She didn't ask about the medal. She said, I'm proud of you. No conditions, no advice. Just that. I said thank you. And I meant it. 7 months after the ceremony, I submitted a proposal through my chain of command for an EOD awareness program. The goal was simple. Bring the work out of the classified dark and into high school auditoriums. Not the tactics, not the techniques, the discipline, the patience, the understanding that precision under pressure is not a military skill. It is a human one. The program launched at Fort Liberty. First year, 1,400 students across 6 counties. I stood in gymnasiums that smelled like floor wax and adolescence, and I talked about what it means to approach something dangerous slowly. To measure before you move. To trust your training when every nerve in your body is telling you to run. I never mentioned my family. I never mentioned the dinner. I never mentioned the medal being stolen or returned. I talked about the wire, about the silence between the click and the clear, about the discipline of standing still when everything inside you is screaming. The students listened. Some of them understood. That was enough. I work at Fort Liberty now. Same post, same MOS. No plaques on my desk, no framed citations on the wall. Just Isla, Staff Sergeant Fairburn, the woman who works with tools. There is power in patience. There is freedom in truth, even if it comes late. And there is a kind of strength that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't perform. It doesn't borrow someone else's silence and fill it with noise. It simply stands still. And it waits. Silence was never my weakness. It was my longest-held position. I am no longer missing. If you enjoyed this story about quiet competence winning over loud arrogance, hit that like button and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell for more stories just like this one. Thanks for watching.